Thank you and welcome to this first of the 3 AHRC funded symposia. So we want to register on camera our thanks to the Arts and Humanities Research Council for funding this project in Multimedia Tools in Electroacoustic Music Analysis. It's 3 years long, the first year has concluded, and essentially today in the afternoon you will see some of the fruits of the first year of this project with a presentation by Pierre Coutry and Mike Gatt of 2 major initiatives within it from our postdoc programmer and from our research student. Leigh and I will hover in the background. Leigh will be giving a presentation as part of this first group, whereas I will not. Michael Clark we've invited to be a kind of un-keynote speaker. I've invited him not to speak. I've invited him to take notes. I've invited him to intervene with questions. And I've invited him to help summarize in the final conclusion. So welcome. As I say, this is a first gathering for us of what we hope will be an expanding community of participants in the project. We're very keen on developing a community of people interested in this work. Some business. There's a fire exit through that door there. It may appear locked, but in fact it's got a flip lock this side to get out. There's a fire exit in the way you came in. There is a loo through the door, absolutely unmarked door there, and on the left. And Narcia has been very efficiently handing out these things from the Font pub, which is 1 minute walk to the right and up. Others have pointed out there's the Shivali vegetarian Indian restaurant walking distance away. I won't list them all, I'm afraid. Ask locals if you don't want to book a sandwich or just come to the pub anyway. Please get the completed forms to Narcia on the desk there before 12 noon. The pub opens at 12, but take the orders over, ring what you want, put your name on, pay for it, I'm afraid, when you collect it, and they should be ready for us when we get there at 1:30. Last time we had a symposium, it took about 50 minutes to get served, which is why we introduced this time. Right, we're going to start. I am going to be the bad cop for the day, and I invite Leigh Landy to launch our proceedings. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to play a double role with my 10 minutes, which means I get 5 minutes for each. So you can look at the top and the bottom of that slide. I intend to cover both in the little time allocation I have. I thought it would be opportune to try to apply the top half as part of this introduction, and thus taking a very small chunk of the area of electroacoustic music and introducing that. Looking back at time when Simon Atkinson, who just arrived, and I were working on the EARS site and tried to create its index, the most difficult and fundamentally important decision of that entire project was finding the 6 headers that have remained the same over the 8 or 9 years that thing has been online. And as Simon and I were preparing the proposal for the research grant from the Arts and Humanities Research Council, in one of our numerous chats, this happened in the discussion, what are we looking for when we do analysis? A lot of undergraduate students, many of you teach, write proposals in which they say, I'm going to analyze a piece of music. And my spot answer is, what do you mean by that? And 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a general description of a piece. But the 10th is actually trying to work out what needs to be done to actually gain the information that he or she is looking for. And so this question involved in 4 parts, the order of which is absolutely random. And the tools and approaches are on the top because that's what the project is about. It's not because it's the most important. And I would go on to say that this 4-part question is equally relevant for any other kind of music, not only electroacoustic music. So, which tools might one use to reach a certain goal or approach, maybe with a bit of ambiguity terminology, for which work or works, or if you're doing something more broad, which genre or genres, for which users, we're going to come back to that because that's the key for me, with which intentions. So the last one, I think, is about what do we want to know about this piece? Now, those who had a traditional training may have gone through the grueling effort of dissecting a romantic orchestral composition for its harmonic development. I remember doing Bruckner and Wagner and hating every minute of it, since that wasn't my favorite music, and that remains so to this day. But what I can tell you is when I succeeded in doing it, I didn't discuss rhythm very much, just to name something. I did need to discuss form or structure to a certain extent, because obviously harmony and form do work hand in hand in some context, or melody, or other parameters that one could isolate. So intention, I think we could all kind of grasp. The users is important because I don't think analysis is meant to be for everyone in all cases. Analysis tends to be for specialists, read musicologists. But in fact, analysis can be for other user groups, general or narrow. If young people who are getting introduced to an experimental form of music want to better understand what it's all about, analysis can play a wonderful role. So why wouldn't you do an analysis for young people or people who are inexperienced listeners? Or for musicians. I'm a real-time live electronic performer. I actually want to grasp some of the patterns of what I'm performing and maybe pull them back, manipulate them, and reuse them in real time. Max Patch might do it. Analysis might be helpful as well. So that's a new application of analysis, which Pierre Coupry and I have discussed and will happen after the project, because it's a hell of a lot of work. Works or genres, pretty obvious. Tools and approaches. That's really what we need to be talking about today. Which tools, which approaches are useful in electroacoustic music. Now, another point I'd like to make before jumping to the bottom half is this. Segmentation of electroacoustic music and analysis is the biggest problem that has not been treated sufficiently yet. There are case studies. We've got loads of terms from Schaeffer, merci beaucoup, and from Dennis, thanks very much, up to the level of gestural thinking. But beyond, we're missing means of achieving our goals. And I hope that those speaking today and those responding today, those interested in the project, will help us think out loud about segmentation, or what Simon and I have called meaningful units within electroacoustic composition. More to be said, but let's fill in the gaps at the end of the day. I just hope that some of you will find this separation into four useful. We're going to find it fundamental for the rest of this project and the outcomes that come from it. So I hope you find it useful for us. It's certainly been a great foundation. Now, in my own recent works, I seem to be stealing things that exist already and then reusing them. Some of them are recordings of natural phenomena. A lot of them are recordings from, for example, broadcasting. In the latter case, a lot of those recordings have proven to be highly illegal too, so that adds a really interesting spice to the affair. But I'm not here to speak as a composer. If one looks at this kind of music, what are you looking for? And a lot of things that you could say about that would be patently obvious. But I think there are some special issues in sampling culture. What samples have been taken? Where do they come from? You know, what are the implications of that? There's some very, very political sampling pieces. Some of them are homages. How are they treated? And I don't mean treated in terms of sound manipulation in this case, we'll come to that later. But are they being treated with respect to where they come from? So if you're taking field recordings from Malaysia and reusing that in a musical context, is it really good sound? Or you're actually honoring it? Or as Simon has once said to me, are you using them as a kind of a picture postcard of how exotic Malaysia is, and then let's kind of use those sounds because they're nice? Are you using them ironically? In my recent radio pieces, President Bush has made an acte de présence, and no matter what he says, everybody laughs. So that's an opportunity that you have. Are they used legally? Have they been modified? If so, have they been modified to the extent that you can't recognize the samples? And if so, what has that got to do with sampling culture? What role do the samples play in a work or within a performance if it's being treated live? And finally, how have these samples been integrated into the composition or into the performance? There are many, many other things you could look at in terms of sampling culture. I just think these are things that are rather specific to this type of work and that I would want to engage with. Now, I would also say that how one visualizes sampled compositions is highly relevant, could be very personal, but I think there's lots of discussions to be had about that. And when Pierre introduces e-analysis this afternoon, I could see some real-life representations of samples being used as something to hold on to find your way through the piece, and also to see how things appear and reappear in different guises throughout a piece. I'm sure I'm close to 10 minutes, so I'll shut up here.
Thank you.